Everyone, welcome again to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission's special first public hearing budget meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 5th, and it is 5:02 actually. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Present.
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 If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda? If there are no changes, may we have a motion?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So the first item is presentations. Oh, here we go. And so the first item, item A, is recognition of state awarded appropriations for fiscal year 2023-2024 proclamation. So we have a proclamation that I'm thrilled to present today. This proclamation is in recognition of our first ever state appropriations awarded to Highland Beach. It's the collective efforts of Florida legislators that have resulted in the allocation of crucial state appropriation funds in the amount of $250,000 to our climate vulnerability clean water project, which will rehabilitate our lift stations. And on behalf of the entire town commission, in our sincerest gratitude and with profound appreciation, do hereby proclaim our heartfelt thanks to Governor Ron DeSantis for his leadership, to State Senator Lori Berman of District 26 for her advocacy, and to our very own State Representative Peggy Gossett-Seidman, District 91, for her dedication. For the state for the state appropriation funds for fiscal year 2023-24 awarded to Town of Highland Beach. And we have a proclamation for you. So thank you. I guess, can we take a picture? Oh, let's check it out. Oh, wonderful. So, thank you. Come take a picture.
Sorry.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's open. Where's the check? It's so big. Oh, I was worried it got lost. Lost in the mail.
Highland Beach, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a historic event.
Thank you.
Yeah, first ever.
Oh, yeah, we have the check.
Give us the finance.
Oh, yeah, the finance.
Catch that, David.
Peggy, would you like to make a presentation or say anything?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we left the wiener dog at home, so we'll bring him when you're back in front chambers. I'd just like to say it's an honor and a privilege and a very cool day for me to be able to present this to Highland Beach. We've been trying since 2018, as you know, And certainly Highland Beach, like every community and I believe in the state, should be able to have a share of the pot of money from the state. And in this case, Highland Beach has worked hard. You guys have done a great job carrying on what others started, including when I got up here and said, we need this and that and this and that. So there's nothing like free money, but it really isn't free when you consider it's taxpayer money that the governor sets aside for projects under his purview that he feels are important. When you live on the coast, gee, the water everywhere is a priority, and this will enable your lift station to flow smoothly, among other things, and safely, I might add. So going forward, I mean, it's an honor to live in Highland Beach, going on 32 years, raised my 3 kids here. And even though that check is large, it does not come without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears by the senator and I will tell you, I wrote every person on every committee since 2018 who was in charge of appropriations and the committee man, and I hung out at the desk of those. I also wish to thank my fellow House member Thad Altman. He also was a senator, but Rep. Altman from the Melbourne area was in charge of getting our water appropriations, and he is a diehard Indian River Lagoon, Lake Worth Lagoon, clean water guy. And if you see me at the House running forward, I'm either talking to Rep. Altman or Rep. Caruso, who preceded me. And they also get credit for helping me push this through. I wish I had $1 for every word I wrote to get this done, but the residents of Highland Beach deserve it. They deserve to be honored and recognized, and they really were, because I can do everything I want, but the governor has to sign it. So I thank him, and I thank the senator and the Senate president and a Probst chair who signed off on it. And we'll see what we can do next year. I asked for double.
Excellent.
Yep,
Excellent.
double or nothing. And I don't take nothing. So thank you again. It's an honor to serve you all and Boca Raton in the Southwest County, and we'll be working hard to get more done in the next session, which we go up in 2 weeks. So it's okay. It's a lot of fun, a lot of miles on a big truck, but we'll get there. Thank you, everyone at the commission and the residents of Highland Beach. Appreciate your faith and loyalty. Bye. See you.
Wonderful. Okay, the next item, state legislative updates. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Jared
Oh, hello.
Rosenstein. You should have a memo that I wrote. It's so, first off, pretty cool historic day, our first appropriation. That's, double or nothing. I like that. What I want to do, and what I find to be really proactive and a really smart way to go about this, a lot of cities will shoot in the dark for appropriations. They literally will put projects on a wheel and kind of like this one, right? We have to be very strategic. So the memo I provided you is a list of successful projects. These are projects that were funded in FY 22 and 23. These are projects that survived the governor's veto pen. This memo is a really good example of what we should be looking to do next year, right? Do projects slip through the cracks sometimes? And that's politics. Somebody gets a new fire station, somebody gets a new emergency operations center. It happens, right? But most of the time, municipal lobbying is about picking and choosing your battles. And when it comes to the budget process, water projects, road projects, sewer projects, which I consider also a water project. Those are the top 3 we should be looking at. The manager and I have looked at the CIP, right? You have a couple water and road projects in there. My professional opinion is that that's what we should focus on. Maybe getting half of it funded from the legislature, maybe asking for the whole thing and settling for half, right? I mean, to the representative's point, it's free money, even though it's taxpayer money. But there's a lot of stuff in the CIP that I could see the governor totally vetoing. Whether it's this governor or the next governor, there are projects in there that are really the purview of a city to do, right? There are some that the state can see a benefit investing in, a lift station, for example, right? When it comes to environmental and natural resources, they will spend money on that. Again, water projects and road projects. Infrastructure is infrastructure, and they like to spend money on infrastructure. So my hope is that we can, and we don't have to do it today, but we are coming up soon to some of these deadlines, and I think the manager, you have them in your inbox. We need to pick probably one or two projects that fit into this, the four corners of this mold, right? And then we can make a run at it up in Tallahassee, but that's why this memo combined with, I think you also provided the veto list. Take a look at the veto list. Again, some of those are purely political. I'll be honest with you, some of it's, you can say the wrong thing and get your project vetoed. It happens. But most of the time, there is a real reason. You'll see emergency operations centers vetoed pretty significantly across the board. Why is that? Everybody likes to ask for an EOC, and nobody really gets an EOC unless you're a fiscally constrained county or you're basically Monroe County, needs EOC because they get whacked with hurricanes. Generators, same thing. The state will primarily want a city or a county to pay for generators themselves. In very rare circumstances will you see a generator paid for by the state. However, lift stations, different. Road improvements, whether it's drainage on the sides of roads, whether it's crossing lights for pedestrians, those are things the state will actually pay for. Resurfacing of roads, occasionally they will pay for that. Rare, but they do. The relining of sewer pipes is a big thing. And you have a project I saw in your CIP when I reviewed it. That's something that, there's a great example. The city of Coral Gables, who's a client of my firm, they just got their sewer pipes, a small section of their city, but they asked for an appropriation and they were successful. What I think is interesting here is we've started kind of a snowball effect. Now that we have our first appropriation, it's much easier to go back to the well and be like, hey, we're here again, right? But we can't do it blind, right? So we have to use empirical data. And the empirical data is, here are examples of successful projects my firm has been able to get in the last 2 years for all of our municipalities. And then here's the veto list. It's up to you guys to figure out where we want to target. But again, roads and water, those are the two big infrastructure projects that Tallahassee loves to fund. And I think it's a good win for us. We can get another project nailed down.
Is a bridge also included?
Bridge?
Would that be considered a road? Yeah, like a,
It would, if it's a pre-existing bridge. I've seen FDOT spend money, the Florida Department of Transportation. I've seen them spend money through the legislative appropriation program, for bridge repair. Totally seen that. It's sometimes a heavy lift because, as I'm sure you know, those are expensive projects, right? It depends on what the total dollar amount is. Whatever dollar amount you think you're going to get from the state, I would cut it by half. Okay. There is literally something in the Florida House called the 50% rule, where if they reduce a project below 50% of the original amount that it was submitted for, it's not going to get funded. So if you always ask for the moon and settle for, if you want 500,000, ask for $1 million. That's my thought process there. But you could do a bridge. You could. It just depends on what the dollar amount is. If we're talking, 15 million, probably not. We're talking 4 or 5, maybe it would be a heavy lift, but you have to settle for 2. That's my advice on that.
but it sounds like you think the sewer lining project is the ideal project to.
Well, when the manager and I went through the CIP, I think that's an easy one for us. Again, because of Thad Altman, it's a water project, right? Chair Altman is the keeper of the water projects. He loves Representative Gossett-Simon, which is a good thing for us. And when I'm not running into his office to bug him about Highland Beach, she is. So we'll pass each other in the hallway. It's like a relay race. But honestly, the sewer project in the CIP is a really good one to look at, right? But think about it. If you guys could live with getting half that pot of money, maybe we can ask for the whole thing. I think if I recall, it's like 300,000, I think, in the CIP. Up north of that, okay?
The whole thing's probably 2.5, 3 million.
Okay.
But we
Broke it out.
broke it out like a phase 1, phase 2, pilot, sewer lining, blah, 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 something.
Sure. So, we could come up with I think a healthy number to ask for and then have that. That's the realistic number, right? So again, we'll brainstorm on that, but I think that's a really good thing for you guys to consider.
And then was there something you said about showing community support for a project? Like does there need to be documented community support for a project?
So sometimes that is the case when the appropriation forms are filled out. And I advise you guys to look at them, and I'm happy to re-provide them to you. There's a lot of, has there been documented community support, right? There are a lot of sections where you can fill out, has the city had meetings about this? And it helps. It does. It's not a deciding factor. If you're sitting in front of a chairman of an appropriation committee or one of the subcommittees and you say, hey, this project is a really good project and they want to fund it, but no one came to a city commission meeting to talk about it, they're still going to fund it, right? If it's a bonus, it's not a do all end all. Anything
Yeah,
else?
so I guess we'll take a look at our projects and figure out which are the best ones.
Would the commission be comfortable if we move forward with finding or securing dollars for the sewer project? If that's kind of the prior, we've talked about it earlier today with some of our charter questions. It being such a sizable project, this should really be kind of our focus. Sounds like it,
I
what
think
I've
so.
heard is the way
Yes.
to go, so.
Yes,
Should it only be one or should we come up with a second project as well? Or
You can ask, again, we can ask for two. But
is
it's-
it better to just do, if it's better, just do one, we'll just do one, but.
So I have had mixed results on that. So I have had municipalities ask for 17 and they get 7 and they're very upset, right? I've had municipalities ask for 2 and they get none. There's very little science behind this. It's the art of relationships. I'm not a scientist, but I can schmooze. At the end of the day, I'm not against us asking for 2. But I want to focus one. And why asking for 2 is good is at a certain point during the budget negotiation process, we can say, this is our priority, eject this one, right? Which then they put all their eggs in that one basket and that ensures us that that's gonna pass, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's almost like a counterweight that we can let loose and then our balloon flies, right? It's totally your call.
Because didn't we have to do work on the Bellito Bridge? Didn't I hear that before? Or paving some of the side roads that we have?
So yeah,
Mm.
there's some structural issues around the Bellito Bridge. It's a smaller project. We could go for that, the sewer lining project. We have the old fire station. Doesn't sound like that really draws, but maybe that's the throwaway, just to
I
get them
saw
to
it-
focus on
I
this.
saw
This
it in the
comes through.
CIP, I saw it at the fire
Yeah.
station, yeah.
But if we have time on the bridge, could we use that as the sacrificial project?
By the way, that's part of the strategy, right?
Right.
It's,
And again, we haven't engineered that one. The sewer lining project shelf ready. It's sitting there designed. I can bid it out tomorrow. Any portion thereof. So we're ready to go. We've done all the design work. We've televised it. We spent a lot of money getting ready for this project. It's just we had problems with bidders, this and that. So it's a good project. 'Cause it's shovel ready, right? So we could
So I
make it
think,
bigger, make it smaller pretty quickly.
so that one I think is pretty clear. I don't know if you want to take a look at the list and see what would be a good, I don't know what people's thoughts are on a second project or
I think
not.
it's a good idea,
Yeah, I would be in favor. How do you feel about a second project?
but nothing to lose with that.
Yeah,
That's
nothing,
right.
yeah, right?
Sure. So we
So-
could work and then we'll I'll work with our legislators, with Jared, try to see, what Peggy can sell. And we'll draft that up a little bit and bring it back to you all to see it, kind of get the final version and hit the streets and start shaking hands.
Because I guess the only danger is, let's say the sacrificial project got funding, we would have to do it, right? Right? Like, that's the danger. Because if we didn't intend to, like,
I wouldn't do that to us, put us in we have to do it. So
right,
these are have to projects.
Correct.
So if we get one money, but not the other, great, or vice versa, it's all a win. It's all a victory. There's not a
Right.
bad spot to be in.
but we should probably pick a project that we need to do. I don't know how soon you think we need to do the bridge or the paving of our side roads. or
This
something.
paving on the side roads aren't that bad.
No.
The bridge isn't. It needs work, but it's not terrible. Sewer,
So that's clear.
We
But
need
what
to.
would be the second? Yeah, maybe just take a look at the list and see.
Mhm.
Okay.
Is there anything related to the rehab of the fire station that can fit into any of these other categories? That would be a go. Anything about that project?
It's not a bad idea. I like that concept. So and Representative Goss-Simon can explain this. But in Tallahassee, budgets are broken down into budget silos, right? So water projects are in one silo, road projects are in one silo, education projects are in one silo, so on and so forth. What I like to do as part of my secret sauce
Mhm.
is I'll put two projects in the same silo. Because the chairman will only have a limited amount of money in its budget to spend, right? They essentially get a budget to spend on these projects. And if you're giving them a freebie where it's like, okay, we have two water projects, I don't really care about this one. It frees up to help your friend or whatever. You can eject this and then you move forward with our water project. That ensures that our water project moves forward. So if there's something related to this, we want to do the sewer as the primary. If there's something related to that we can fill out and we get it, possible. You don't, it's okay. That's my thought process, keeping it in the same silo. Like a fire station wouldn't be in the same silo as the water project, but if you had another water project, remember, it doesn't necessarily need to be in your comprehensive plan. But just thinking outside the box here.
Again, we know we still have another lift
Yeah,
station, so
but
we could
then-
put that in there too. I mean, that's a need too. So-
So by the way, that's funded in the same silo.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer.
Okay, that makes sense.
Put
to
those
me.
two in the same bucket.
That makes sense.
They're both needs. We got to do it. So.
That's the strategy I would,
And double or nothing.
double or nothing.
Yep, yep. Like,
Everything else, we're okay?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
guys. Good
thank
seeing you all.
you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, next item, fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed final budget.
So you have before you as David walks up, he gets excited. So we can do the full presentation. A lot of it is replicated. Or we just kind of hit the highlights and answer questions. I just didn't know what people's desires are here. But we queued it up. And again, that's in those budget resolutions. And again, we're looking at a $30.5 million budget and 3.875 millage rate. Again, that's consistent through.
So I think highlights are good unless anybody wants the full, yeah, I think highlights, yeah.
Highlights.
Okay, there's certain things that I have to cover. Right, one being the millage rate, and so we'll go through that, but real quick. And so you have a copy of the presentation, so you don't have to look behind you. Anyway, this right here is just a summary, right? This right here is where our property assessed values have been since 2019. You can see the growth there. You can also see the line there, right? It's starting to come down a little bit. We just don't know where that is just yet, but you can see the huge increase in there. So let's summarize it, okay? So our millage rate of 3.5875 is made up of these compartments per se, right? So you got our operating millage. We broke out the debt service for the fire department. It's not a separate millage, but we just wanted to show you where that fits in, okay? And so our overall operating millage is the sum of those two. Then you have our voter debt millage. That's the water fund, right? You can see that that went down. And if you remember, that's a result of lowering debt service, okay? And so when you add all those numbers up, it came to again, our plan was to remain at 3.5875. The next slide, number 4, this right here just shows you those numbers graphically. Okay, the line there represents the millage rate. Okay, the gray line is our debt millage. The blue line is our operating millage. And as I said before, we added that the debt service and the fire side. The next,
room, buddy.
I know, right? I know. It's not the first time. Anyway, so now how does that compare? Okay, how do we compare to our surrounding cousins, neighbors. All right, there you can see we fit in nicely there in the third slot. Okay, and you can also see on the left-hand side what your total tax bill at this point is anticipated to be. Right, Highland Beach is about 23% of that. So think about all the services that you get. Right, fire, police, public library, public works, water, sewer, all of those services, full service community, and we're at 23% of the total tax rate. The next one, as I said before, if you go on to the next page, this is what you will see when we have to advertise. So part of Florida legislation is, right, I have to do certain steps in a certain way. Okay, so we have to have this meeting, okay, at 5:01. Next thing you'll see in the paper is I have to have this budget hearing. Okay, now certain numbers are 100% of the tax rate. Certain numbers are I'm only allowed to budget 96% of what I think I get. So that's what you'll see the difference there. The one on the left-hand side, they require me to put it in at 100%. The one on the right-hand side, I'm required to only do 96%, and I have to show each individual fund. And again, just to recap, we've seen this 3 or 4 times already, right? We know that operating expenses, we know that personnel expenses, we talked about that. We talked about how we reduced thankfully reduced our health insurance premium requirement, right? And so what did we do with that excess? Well, the board, the last time we were here, the board voted that, you know what, we're going to put that back into our fire reserves to start to replenish that. And why is that smart in a staff's position? Is that, you remember that line that we saw back there, right? Property values are starting to come down a little bit. So we're just trying to be conservative in nature. Again, general fund, high level. If you recall, I'm on slide number 8. High level, you can see where our general fund budget typically was at, right? FY20, FY21, FY22, around that $12 million range, right? Well, how did we get up to FY23? Well, that's the fire rescue, right? We're building a fire station. We're developing our own fire department. How did we fund that? Well, we funded that with reserves. That's what that is. 2024. What are we doing? Same thing. We're finishing up the fire department. We're going to have 24 more FTEs come on board as staff. And how are we funding that? Well, that's through that bank loan that we secured early on. And in a nutshell, this right here is what I was showing here on this one here is where we swap from using funds that were appropriated from reserves to now using other financing sources. That's our bank loan. So that's really what I wanted to show on that one there. And once we determined which alternative we were going to do, if you recall, last time we looked at 3 different alternatives, that would affect our fund balance. But now that you can see, once that's been discussed and agreed on, that our fund balance continues to remain healthy, right? We have a nice balanced mix of what we have in each fund. Look, we have about 34% in budget stabilization, another 34% disaster recovery, 29% unassigned, which is good. And then we're starting to rebuild the fire fund at additional 4%. Discretionary sales tax, these right here, again, it's a separate fund. Line number 11, some of the projects that we had just discussed were in here. That's a separate fund. Building department, same idea. Building department is really benefiting from the interlocal agreement that we have with Gulfstream. And that is, we continue to see that into the future. The change here, the big change here, if you remember, right, is transferring an additional $150,000 for our fire marshal community risk reduction. And that was very important. So the fire department, not the fire department, the building fund continues to have an excess surplus, which is good. It's healthy. And again, we see a lot, we see this in building departments. You see the fluctuations, right? Building starts to go gangbusters, rehab, and it starts to go. But we are preparing for kind of that downturn where people put a brake on things. But right now it has a good, healthy surplus. And what are we doing with that surplus? As we said, we're reallocating those funds for the community service fire risk reduction community program. Water and sewer, I slimmed down here a little bit because we're going to talk about that next on water and sewer. Matter of fact, it's a separate slideshow. We'll go into that. So hold, but anyway, in a nutshell, our revenues, we did anticipate when we did a 5-year staff along with the commission did a 5-year projection of where we thought we were going to be for water and sewer with this as a goal in mind. You always want your water and sewer to be self-sustaining. That's what you want to be. That's why we develop user rates. Now, when you think about what has to go into a user rate, has to be operations, right? Has to be debt service, has to be capital improvement, has to be enough reserves. So all those 4 things have to be included in your water rates to be able to have that. And we are getting close. So with that additional 8% revenue, which adds about another $234,000, we'll be on track to meet our 5-year target with that. The operating expenses. What was the big thing here with the operating expenses? The big thing here, the big shifts were the debt service. If you recall, right, our debt service went down by $328,000, right? But what increased? The biggest thing in any type of water and sewer utility is chemicals and power. These things run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're not talking 120 volts. We're talking major voltage at the peak cycle. A lot of times we invest in VFDs, which will be able to bring that down, variable frequency drives, which bring that down. Maybe that pump doesn't need to always run at 220 volts. Maybe it can slim down a little bit. So that's why we invest in those things. But those are the 2 main cost components in any type of water and sewer department is that. But again, what did we do? We took we increased for a cost of living at about 5 to 6.5% for salaries and related. We offset that by the health insurance savings. Remember, we thought we were going to have a 25% increase in health insurance. And thank God that didn't materialize. But anyway, so we were able to allocate that. Sewer, same idea. Next slideshow, we'll do a deeper dive into sewer. But in addition, we had planned out as part of our 5-year plan. Oh, by the way, 2 years ago, the rate increase was 11%. The year before that, the rate increase was 10%. So we are heading into the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's a combination of our debt service going down and maintaining our rates to keep up with inflation. Inflation is high for these utility systems. Same idea here. We added additional funds. When we got we added that into our 2024 budget, the $250,000 check, try to cash that tomorrow, and we'll get that in there. And, but keep in mind, here's what I keep in mind, right? We have to match that. Right? I know, and that's great. We'll take it all day long. We have to match it. We have to sit there and we have to tell the state of Florida. They'll come back to us. We're going to want to see receipts, right? So all of these grants are great. It does cause a little bit more work on staff to say, okay, yep, we got to keep track of this. We got to show the state of Florida to make sure that they're okay with that. But at the end of the day, we increased our sewer funding expenditures there to reflect that additional $250,000. In summary, as I wind it up, as the town manager said, our millage rate that staff has proposed is the 3.8575. And our annual budget for this year is $30,796,710 for all funds. What's next? What will you see next during this cycle? Well, we have the public hearing today, right? Next, what you'll see is you'll see a newspaper ad. Okay, you'll see a newspaper ad. As a matter of fact, from September, that's all you're going to see from all these surrounding communities. You're going to see a bunch of newspaper ads because it's required. And then what we're going to have is we're going to have one last meeting, September 21st, to adopt the final budget. So. And that's all staff has. Questions? I know it's a lot. Not a lot has changed. It's just updating and doing the formality for the state of Florida to hold a public hearing and to have the first reading of what our millage rate is going to be and what our budget is going to be and why.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Excellent presentation.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Indirect, but I'm curious about something. So the milestone recertification that is occurring in the town, the expenditures, will that have a direct impact on the value of the town, or is the assessed value more based upon comp sales?
I believe that the value is based on comparative sales. Yeah,
Okay.
right. And they do a bang up job there.
Yeah.
Right. So. And again, if you look at your first couple of slides there, you can see, listen, this year and last year are outliers. And you could see that, right? And so what staff's responsibility and goal to you is to get us to prepare us for normalcy, right? You know what I mean? And so, we believe that with your direction, putting that money back, $250,000 back into it, because when you see those, anybody in accounting or finance, those outliers just stick out, right? And so when you see 13.7, 13.2 increase in property values, and it's not sustainable, right? And so we have to build budgets. And that's why staff, along with commission, did 5-year projections, right? We did 5-year projections. And so staff still recommends sticking with the plan, and it'll be good.
Now, another question is the 250,000 that was received and it's in revenues. How did we treat the match?
Well, what we did is we put it into revenues and we increased our
Expense?
our expenditures, right, to balance out. Yes.
I have another question. Will we increase our water revenue once the new meters are installed?
Yes. Typically, like a sewer lining project, right? Typically, you don't go out there in 1 week and replace all the meters, right? It's a process, right? You got to get the contractor, you got to pull the other one. Sometimes you got to find it. Okay. And that's the challenge. But at the end of the day, you pick a block, right? Or a line of houses, and you have your contractor start from here to there. Now, how do you know which ones to do? Well, typically what you do is you rank your water meters by age, right? And flow. What I mean by that is, when you have a water meter that has millions and millions of gallons of water flowing through that, it may only be 3 years old. That thing is wearing out, right? And so you look at those two criterias. And then what you said is you do a 10% per year. And that's how you kind of keep up with it. It does help. It helps us currently and in the long term by having accurate water meters. So yes.
Could that be another, the water meters, could that be another item that we can add?
Generally, they'll probably turn away from it because it's kind of like a routine
Small.
maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Moving on to item 6A. Resolution number 2023-021, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the fiscal year 2023-2024 schedule of fees for the purpose of increasing water and sewer rates, providing for conflicts and providing an effective date.
And you will find that, that's the second handout or the first handout, depending on which order I put it on. Let's see. So I'm just trying to share my screen back there. I don't know if they'll let me share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay, we'll go to Plan B. Okay, so in front of you, you have your water and sewer rates. So what I did is a brief presentation, okay, and we'll walk through it. So you're looking at this right here is the first slide, right? Okay. Now, what is this slide? It looks kind of funny, doesn't it? Right. Right. But this is our goal. Okay. And what is our goal, right? With any organization, right? Our goal is to line up our expenditures with our operating revenue, right? Okay. It's no different than a condo or no different, thank you, no different than a condo association or your personal finances. Okay. So what our goal, staff's goal, along with the commission has always been, you know what? Our expenditures have been exceeding the amount of revenue that we've been bringing in. You can only do that for a short term, right? And we all know that. And that's why the commission was quick in 2021, I believe, to have Raftellus do a rate analysis, right? You have to have that, okay? It's very important. And so they looked at it and that's where they recommended their rate increases, okay? So now if you look and you look at 2023, FY 22, 2023, right? We knew that we were still a little bit, there's still a little gap there, right? And so staff knew that, okay, we have to raise rates. Now, what you'll see is our rate increases are definitely affected by the escalation of prices that have been happening. And let me go through that. So I'm on page 3. Okay. So page 3, what you're going to see here is you're going to see a snapshot of the history of our water rates, right? The water rates are the first 2/3. The bottom there's the sewer rates, and that's how it's broken up. Raftellus did a rate analysis in January of 2021. Okay. January of 2021. Now, they did rate increases all the way up through 2025. And so we've been following their rate increases. They had an 11% for 2022. We said we concur. They had a 10% for 2023. We said we concur. 2024, their rate increases was only 5%. The reason why is because they did not anticipate. You remember, let's go back and remember what property values did, right? 4-5% is normalcy. Jumps up 13.7, 13.3. That's kind of what inflation, what we've been fighting with here. And so what staff recommended is we said, you know what, we needed to add an additional 3% to that original 5% to contradict that. Why? If we go back one, we're trying to narrow that curve right there that we see, right? We're trying to get our operating expenses and our operating revenue a little bit closer together to where we don't have to pull from reserves. We don't have to have a debt service millage on our millage rate. That's the goal. And so when we look at it, we say, okay, let's look at something that's interesting to me anyway, but I find odd things interesting, right? And that's our usage. So if you go to the next page, what does this tell me? All right. So what I have on the top there, I have irrigation base and irrigation usage for 2022, and I have water base and water usage for 2022. The next column there is our usage, right? It's our usage, how much usage they've used. And then what I put there was our realized rate. See what the realized rate is for water usage? The realized rate for water usage is $3.88, and it went up to $3.95 per 1,000 gallons, right? If we go back go back to one page, go back to page number 3. Most of our water revenue, right? We don't get out of that first tier. You guys see what I mean by tier there? See our water tier, we have a base fee right on the top of $48.84. And then we have 0 to 10,000 gallons. We charge $2.68 for that 0 to 10,000 gallons. Most of our water users, right, are using between 5,000 and 6,000 gallons. They never get to that 10,000 gallon tier. Okay. That's why a lot of times when you see that I say water consumption went up 21%. Well, that doesn't necessarily translate into a 21% increase in revenue, okay? Because the reason why is where they're charged in that layer of tier. It's almost like when you look at your electric bill and you see peak usage, you have a different rate for peak usage versus non-peak usage. Same idea here. But you can also see that how many irrigation accounts do we have? Well, we have 56 irrigation accounts, right? The big properties and homes and things like that. And we got about 4,300, individual water accounts. So you can see there that although irrigation is a higher usage, right, on a monthly basis, there's less of them. So it's just kind of interesting. So how did I determine the rates? If you go down to page 5, so here what I looked at is I said, okay, this is our base fees. Our base fees are kind of stable, right? We're kind of built out already. So I know that in 2022, here were our base fees for irrigation. Here are base fees for water. 2023, I estimated what our next billing cycle was going to be. And what I did is I increased that by the 8%. Said, okay, guess what? On water base fees, we're going to have about $102,000 increase in revenue. Same thing I did with usage, because remember, base fees and usage are different, right?
Mhm.
And so at the end of, yes. The usage, right? The usage was right. The usage there, the amount that they realized was 11%. Our rate index is only at 8%. Same thing with the water. So I did that. I indexed it. I looked at our history, right? I looked at how much month over month that we used. What does it look like it's going to be? And we adjusted the rates at about 8% there as well to correspond with our numbers. Because that's why, see, when I say that, hey, our water revenue, or not our water revenue, our water usage increased by 21%. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that our revenues have increased 21%. The reason why that is because it's such a small tier structure. We don't get beyond that first tier. Okay. Same thing with irrigation. We saw irrigation, we saw an increase. These are all things, but you'll also notice that there is a seasonality with Highland Beach, and you're all aware of that, right? And again, as we discussed, have you seen this before? This right here is our expenditures for the water department. Why do we need to have a rate increase? is because we're trying to close the gap between our revenues and our expenditures. And you can see that on slide number 10, that we're still pulling about $536,000 from reserves for our water fund. Okay, and that's why we need that. The 8% rate increase on the water side will equate to about $243,000 of additional revenue as an estimate. Okay, so we've already baked that into here. Let's roll forward to next year. Next year, we reduce our debt by another 300 and something $1,000. And we will close in on that appropriation from reserves, right? That appropriation from reserves will begin to whittle down to nothing, and it'll be able to be self-sustained. And again, as we said, $369,000 in 2024 and another $369,000 in 2025. And again, we'll bridge that gap. After all this, our water fund, what we're estimating, will still have about 105 days cash on hand, which is healthy. We like to be around, 150 days. But right now, if you recall, we transferred the money, ARPA funds from the water and sewer department. We transferred that over to the fire department. And so, but as with rate increases, as well as with reducing our debt service on the water side, we'll be able to narrow that gap. Same idea with the sewer fund. Sewer fund, our operating revenues and expenses, we're trying to rebalance that out. Same idea. There you can see what the rate revenue is, what we estimated, what our revenue increase would be with this 8%. That 8% on the sewer side equates to about $130,000 of additional revenue. But where that additional revenue is going to be used at is our capital outlay. You had, Ms. Goldberg, you had mentioned the $250,000. It's included in that $700,000 on slide number 17. So that's where we're going to use that. The sewer side of life has a little bit healthier fund balance. The reason why that is because sewer is so much more corrosive and so much more maintenance driven than the water side. With the amount of lift stations and pumping that goes on, we need a little bit healthier reserves in that fund. And so that's staff's recommendation. As I said before, historically, we went from 11% rate increases to 10% rate increases. Would have been 5%, but because we're fighting with inflation, staff recommended the additional 3% to have a final rate for water and sewer at 8%.
David, the sewage goes into Delray, right?
Yes.
And what's their increase every year been?
Yeah, around 3.5%.
3.5%.
Now, here's the interesting thing, right? We do the sewer lining. What does that help us with? That helps us with salt water that's coming into our sewer pipes that we are sending to Delray that we are paying to treat. So that's why you want to line your sewer pipes, right? Just like on your driveway, you get cracks. Well, guess what? In those pipes down there, water table rises up, salt water comes in. We pump that salt water to Delray. They treat it on a per 1,000 gallon basis. So that's why that's also important. Now, will that be immediate? No, we do it in phases, right? Just like the meter change out. We do it over time. We do it in phases. but eventually you will see a reduction in that type of expense.
So on slide 2 and on slide 13, I know we're talking about an 8% increase this year. This 5-year water plan and, the green line, the red lines, that includes what, an 8% increase every year? Is that what's baked in here?
Yes, yes.
So it's, so the green line includes, history, it's the actual history of the increases.
Yes,
But then, for the, I guess, 23, 24 point, that's the 8% that
Yep.
we're discussed, that we are
That's
hopefully
correct.
approving today. And then every year thereafter is an 8% increase.
Right.
Is what we're put in the 5-year plan. And then
Yep.
for the expenses are those expense assumptions that you
Yes.
have in there, which.
Most of them were 5%, back in my day, 5% was like sometimes you use 3%, 5% on some of your expenses. A lot of it, you want to have, as the mayor pointed out on slide 2 there, that gap there that you see in the later periods, that's, you remember, what do rates need to do? Rates need to pay for operating expenses, pay for debt service, and pay for capital. That's what they need to do. That's what that excess there is, to pay for our capital needs in the future. So yes. And we look at that every year. Matter of fact, when we're done here, when we get the final billing, we have one more billing cycle. Right now, the data that I showed you is through cycle 5. We have one more through cycle 6. Okay. When we get that, we will redo our 5-year forecast. We'll add another year in there and we'll update year 1 of our forecast to see where the outlying years, if we can lower that necessary rate increase. So that's the goal.
Yeah, so on slide 6, I guess I would just point out, on the right-hand side, under the water column, the 2023, the cycle 6, August, September, that's your estimate.
Yep.
Right? That is just,
Some of them-
could be considered a conservative estimate, because if you look at the year prior, that, for 2022, that 6th cycle was actually the highest, but
Yes.
you're not assuming that. I know I've used more water for this August, September. So if that ends up being higher, I'm assuming on slide 12, that would impact, that basically flows right through to the fund balance, right? So
Yes.
that would increase the unrestricted balance. So it might very well might be more than 105 days.
Yes.
So to the extent that that ends up being higher than the 215,000, I mean, it basically just will flow through and we'll have more than 105 days.
Right.
And I'm thinking it'll
Absolutely.
hopefully be 120, which is my, magic
Yep.
thing. So, and the other thing I'd point out is, the 105, that is the 1.5 million, right? So that's, you say, 1.5, that sounds like a lot. When we go to the sewer side, slide 18, 287 days cash, that sounds kind of like a lot, but it's really, is that the 165,000? Is that what is what is, or is it the 1.9 million?
1.9.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
the 1.9 million. Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay,
And again, right, and the reason why you want that
right.
is.
No,
because, right,
I'm good
right,
with that.
yeah,
No, I'm
right.
good. I just wanted to point out, sometimes percentages you can, make look big or not.
Yep.
I think it's important to look at both the days cash and the actual dollars here, which is, almost $2 million, which is a good amount.
Absolutely.
I am in support of that. I wouldn't want to change that.
Yep.
And hopefully we can maybe use it towards the future sewer lining if we have to come up with
Your
some
match.
money. So I am very much in favor of building up that balance, because hopefully Jared is successful and we get some appropriations money and we can use, some surplus here, and then we don't have to have any more debt.
Right.
And we can just, avoid any, interest
Yep.
expenses. That is what I'm, hopeful.
And the other thing too is let's say that, and you're right, my estimates are conservative, but let's say it really comes in really great. Let's say it's stellar, right? Well, that means in our 5-year forecast, right, I may be able to lower those necessary rate increases. Okay. And so again, as we get more data, right, we're driven by data decisions, right? Not by emotion. We're driven by data decisions. What is the data telling us? And so at the end of the day, if that comes in better than what I anticipated, then we'll look at next year's rate increases. Maybe that doesn't need to be at our forecasted 8%. Maybe that can go down to a normal 5%-ish. So so we're required. So here's what we did. We noticed everybody per Florida statute that we noticed on everyone's bill that we would have a rate hearing today. And so we gave the presentation, staff made the recommendation to the commission as to why we need that. These rates don't go into effect until October 1st. And so they will not even see it on their bill until December. So that's just based on how we bill. So staff recommends approval of that rate. Or whatever.
David, on the grant, we have to spend that money, so we have to lay the money out first, then we get the receipts, then we gotta hand them in.
Yep.
So we gotta.
Yeah, so we won't do it, we'll do it incrementally, right? You know what I mean? We'll spend $100K or whatever, and then we'll go ahead, we'll remit that to the state of Florida to get that back. So we're not gonna wait until the end. We'll do it when we accumulate maybe $50,000 of expenditures. We'll accumulate that, send it off to the state, let them send us a check.
Any other comments from the commission? Any public comments? No. Do we need a motion? for this?
It's just a budget presentation.
It's a
No,
resolution.
It's a resolution.
Resolution
Oh.
to
Yes,
accept.
need a motion to
the
approve
word
this
is-
resolution.
And do we need a roll call, or would it be do a roll call? Okay,
Yeah.
maybe we have a motion.
I move that we approve resolution number 2023-021.
Okay, Commissioner David,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes,
and Mayor Moore.
Yes,
Motion carries.
excellent. Okay, so item B, resolution number 2023-022, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, adopting a final millage rate of 3.4182 mils for the town's general operating funds for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2023 and ending September 30th, 2024. Providing that the final millage rate of 3.4182 mils is 19.3006% greater than the computed rollback rate of 2.8652 mils, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. So this is a public hearing. And so, will David do?
No,
No.
presentations from
No
David.
presentations
No, no.
For this, and any public comments?
Yeah.
And then discussion among.
I don't have anything to add to that.
I think we've discussed this a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah.
The heavy
Yes.
lifting has
David did a good
been
job.
done. We have reviewed this thoroughly, since June, July, we've been looking at this. So we have already thoroughly gone through this. And so I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that we accept resolution number 2023-022.
Seconded.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
yes,
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next item, C, resolution number 2023-023. A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, adopting a final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024, determining and fixing the amounts necessary to carry on the government of the town for the ensuing year, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. Any public comments? Any discussion among the commission? Again, we've reviewed all this extensively, so I think if we're ready to make a motion, go ahead.
I move that we accept resolution number 2023-023.
Seconded.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great. Town attorney report. He's not here. We're moving on. Town managers
you.
reports.
Just as you'll see below that report, we're all convening back to do these one more time for the second public hearing requirements of Florida statute for the trim notices. So we'll be back on the 21st at 5:01 PM. That's Thursday, September 21st, 5:01 PM.
Great. So you just read that next item. I'm assuming there are no comments from anyone. So we can adjourn at 6:08 PM. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tried
Good
to
night.
get back there. I tried.